My name is Erick Calder, and I'm the Chief Technology Officer for CryptoSpace. I'm also a partner in CryptoSpace, and I'm co-founder of Alluvial Rewards, which is the US and Mexico licensee of the Vow technology stack. So we are tasked with the sort of gargantuan effort of bringing on all the merchants in the United States and Mexico into the Vow ecosystem. As a background on myself, I come from Wall Street. I'm much older than most people think. I'm 54 years old now, and I started life at 19 working for a primary dealership, which is to say, there's a kind of an informal group of about maybe 50 very large financial houses on the planet that attend the auctions that the Federal Reserve holds every on a periodic basis, and they buy large blocks of debt from the Federal Reserve. They trade it amongst themselves, and they sell it downstream. And that was the beginning of my life. I started right in the heart of Wall Street and central banking and all that stuff. And so I've been in this game for quite some time now. And about 2012, I found the Satoshi paper. A friend of mine gave it to me, and I just read it, and I was stunned. I was like, okay, my God, this is the new path forward. This is going to change basically everything. It changes the power relationships in the world, right? The place that banks have traditionally held all the power, all of a sudden that just sort of crumbles because I don't need to send money. I no longer need an institution. I can do peer-to-peer, right? And so at that point, I decided, okay, I need to do something in this space. I don't know what it is, but I will figure it out. And I've done nothing since. I mean, nothing but since. Finance is a very complex structure, right? There's lots and lots of pieces, lots of participants, lots of incentives, lots of hidden rules and stuff that people just don't understand. Even the language of economics is really impenetrable to the average individual. But at the end of the day, money is not that complicated. And one of the things that Bitcoin does, if Bitcoin did nothing else, it succeeded in one major way, which is it caused people to think about money. Not about making money, right? When people think about money, they think about how do I get it? How do I make it? And how do I spend it? But they never think about the structure of money. How is it born, right? Where does it come from? Where does it go? Who runs this stuff, right? Nobody knows that stuff, right? It's because it gets very complicated quickly and people's eyes just glaze over. And so Bitcoin caused for people to rethink this and say, oh yeah, is it money? I mean, what are the characteristics of money, right? Oh, store of value. What does store of value mean, right? What does fungibility mean? What is, what is transmissibility? There's like all these things that are related to, what is transaction settlements, right? So it has created a great awareness about this. And as people start to think more about it, they realize, oh, actually, money is not that complicated, right? Real money. And when I say real money, I mean that when people think about real money, they think about the US dollar. But the US dollar in our circles, we call that a shitcoin because it has like no cap, right? Real money is by definition limited in supply. And well, the United States dollar just isn't, right? They print as much of it as, 2020, they printed, I think 25% of the total supply. So all of a sudden, when you think about if you think about dollars as shares in a company, let's say that there's 100 shares in a company and you own 10 of them, right? So you own 10% of the company. And that's really nice because when the company makes money, you get 10% of the revenue and all this kind of stuff, the profits, right? Well, if you think about dollars in the same way, when you hold $100, if there's $1,000 in the whole world, you own 10% of the GDP of the world, right? All of a sudden, they decide, well, we're just going to double the monetary supply. So you're still holding on to $10, but now they're worth $5. You just got cheated out of half of your purchasing power, right? And there's really no one out there that understands this fact. I mean, people do understand this fact at certain levels, but the average individual on the ground, like the Main Street kind of guy, he doesn't really get that, right? I mean, he hears everybody talk about it and devaluation, inflation, all these scary terms, but they don't really understand the basic concepts. So let me talk a little bit about value. We tend to value things that are hard to get. Because if they're easy to get, well, then we can just get them anytime that we want, and they're just not that valuable, right? If you want sand, there's plenty of sand. Just go to a beach. There's a ton of it, not worth very much. If you want gold, well, you don't know where it is. So you have to go digging holes, right? Or you have to go panning for it. And you might not even recognize gold. And then you have to purify it. It takes a lot of effort to do it. And so it's rare. And it's that rarity that gives it its value. So gold is real money. There are certain characteristics that make for money. And certainly durability is one of them. So cows are valuable, right? But they don't make for very good money because they die. They get old. And the same thing with wheat and most commodities. And so gold was discovered a long time ago to not tarnish and to be impossible to destroy. And therefore, you can bequeath it. You can leave it to your children. You can work hard your whole life. You care and you love your children, and you leave them something in the form of gold. So gold is real money, right? And so to a large extent, the reason why it's real money is because it's limited in supply, right? Not only is it hard to get, to go find and stuff, but there's only so much of it. So we have this, so Professor Lawrence Lessig talks about a property of physical things called contentiousness. If I have a cup of coffee, right, I can give it to you and then you can have it. But then I can't have it too. We can't both have it, right? The cup is contentious. If I send you a photograph from my phone, right, over the internet, what happens is I still have the photograph and then you have it too. It's non-contentious, right? Ideas are non-contentious. I'm sitting here, I've got this idea in my head and I verbalize it and it's now in your head. We both have it. It's non-contentious, right? Fire is non-contentious, right? If I'm smoking a cigarette, I can light your cigarette with mine. I can give you my fire. We both have it. So the problem with non-contentious things is that they're not terribly valuable because I can just make as many copies as I want. And so it's not terribly valuable. What Satoshi Nakamoto did, his great contribution to society, was he created contentiousness on the internet. Right? Before Bitcoin, there was nothing on the internet that was contentious. Everything was basically a copy. You make a copy, you create, you transmit something, and it's already a copy. With Bitcoin, if I give you a Bitcoin, I can't have it. Either you can have it or I can have it, but both of us can't have it at the same time, right? So it's contentious. And so all of a sudden, we have gold on the internet, right? We have the first time when there's a guaranteed limited supply of something, but it's on the internet. And in fact, Bitcoin is even better than gold because it is not only limited in supply, it's actually provably limited in supply. So right now, we say, well, there's, X number of tons of gold above ground, and every year we invest more money to dig holes in the ground and we find less and less gold, right? But it's always possible that we just haven't been digging in the right places. Someone digs one day and, oh my God, there's this huge load of gold. And all of a sudden, gold tanks in price, right? Because because no one can guarantee that there isn't actually a whole ton of, or maybe a meteorite crashes on the planet and it's full of gold, right? So, okay. With Bitcoin, that will never happen. There are going to be 21 million coins in existence by the year 2140 or so. And that's it. We're guaranteed that, and on top of that, of course, there's all the people who lose their private keys, so that Bitcoin will continue to exist forever, but it will be outside of anyone's reach. It's destroyed as far as anyone's concerned, right? And every year we lose Bitcoin. So Bitcoin has, as internet money, it has these great advantages over gold. For example, I don't have to worry about storage, right? If I own gold, and I have owned gold in my life, what do I do with it? Do I put it into a safety deposit bank box in a bank? Well, I don't trust the banks, because back in 1930s or 40s, President Roosevelt said, okay, we're banning the ownership of gold. We will show up to every bank. We will force them to open up the safety deposit boxes, and we will confiscate all of the American gold that is owned, right? Oh my God. So can I put my gold? No, that's not really good. Okay. Can I bury it in the ground? Okay. Yeah, but maybe I have to do it in the midnight when no one is watching, so that they know, oh, Erick's digging holes in the ground and he must have something in there, right? It's really a problem, and it's a problem at an individual level. It's an even bigger problem at the institutional level. Right now, you have to have warehouses and security and insurance, and it's a honeypot. Anyone who wants to steal gold, well, they know sort of where it is, right? So Bitcoin has none of these issues. Also, I can't justify, if you're in Germany now, I would like to send you some gold. Can I FedEx it? No, they won't carry gold. Right? How do I get it to you? The answer is I pretty much can't. Right? So Bitcoin is transmissible. I can send you Bitcoin in 0.3 seconds. And it's guaranteed to get to you. Right? No one's going to steal it in transit. And I don't have to store it. It is basically impossible for anyone to even know that I have it. Right? So certainly the confiscatory powers of governments, the idea that they can just come in and take your shit, that kind of goes away, right? Because they don't know you have it. And the first step in being able to confiscate something is the knowledge of possession, right? This is exactly the reason why the Soviet Union forced the manufacturers of typewriters to print an entire page and then register to whom they had sold that typewriter. Because if there were ever any pamphlets out there floating, right, they could do a comparison and identify the typewriter and then trace back to the guys and go arrest them. You need knowledge in order to exercise control, and Bitcoin denies knowledge, right? Therefore, it can't be controlled. And so it's like super gold.
How can we go from here into another future that makes things possible that weren't possible before?
Absolutely. And we all want to be free, right? We want greater freedom. We want to do what we want to do. We don't want other people telling us what to do. I don't want to be paying taxes to a government that is then spending its money to go bomb people in Afghanistan or Syria, or pick any one of 20 places, right? Because that's my tax dollars that are destroying other people's lives, and I just don't want that. Yeah. Right? So the whole cycle of control begins with knowledge, and Bitcoin denies that knowledge, right? Therefore denies control. So the question is, how is the value maintained in Bitcoin? There is a problem called the double spend problem. If you have some Bitcoin in a wallet and you send it to me, how can anyone be guaranteed that you didn't keep a copy of it, right? Because then you could send that same Bitcoin to somebody else, and at that point you're rich, right? Then you just keep spending the same Bitcoin, but what you're really doing is you're creating additional Bitcoins, and therefore you're devaluating everyone's purchasing power, which is really the problem with the US dollar, right? So the answer is that there has to be control over the flow of funds. There is only one mechanism by which Bitcoin can be transferred from one wallet to another. And that mechanism requires the consensus of a great number of people. Consensus is necessary because people lie. We can't. So the problem, one of the other problems that we have with our existing world is that a lot of it is centralized. And that means that certain individuals wield the capacity to make decisions, and they tend to wield that power in their own favor at the cost of everyone else's benefit, right? So if you have the head of the FDA, he will approve a drug if he gets a kickback, right? If
What's
you're
the
the head of
FDA for
the Food and Drug Administration, let's say, right?
Okay.
Or the head of the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, he can look the other way at these egregious crimes that are being committed, because there are interests and there's big there's pressure from above or whatever, right? So there's law, and then there is crime, and in between we have this thing called discretion, right? The authorities have discretion to punish or not punish, and so they're sort of incentivized not to punish if they're properly rewarded in some way, right? And so we know that human beings are ultimately corruptible, right? They're ultimately corrupt. And so in order to decide whether or not you actually sent a Bitcoin to me, we cannot rely on an individual or an authority of some kind, right? We need to rely on a whole bunch of interests that are not necessarily connected to each other, right? And so this is called consensus. In the Bitcoin world, consensus is reached through a mechanism called proof of work. And very quickly, I'm going to describe the issue that Satoshi faced and his solution, right? I need someone to look at your transaction and make two determinations. The first is that you have the funds to send me. You want to send me a Bitcoin. When you send me a Bitcoin, what you do is you write a message and you say, please transfer 1 Bitcoin from my address to Erick's address. And you send this message to the network, right? Now, as one of the participants in the network, I received this message. And I now have to verify two things. The first is that you actually have a Bitcoin to send, right? Because you might have half a Bitcoin and your message says 1 Bitcoin. So then in that case, I look at the message and I discard it. I go, okay, that's no good. So that transaction never happens, right? The second thing is that you need to prove to me that you own the Bitcoin at that address, right? And through dual key cryptography, through asymmetric cryptography, there are ways in which you can do that, right? You sign that message with the private key that actually owns that address, right? And so I, as the recipient of the message, can verify that fact through these cryptographic methods. So if I determine that you do have at least 1 Bitcoin and that you actually own it because you signed it properly, then I will approve this transaction. But I could be a bad actor, right? I could say, I have actually an interest to take this message and rewrite it and say, rather than this Bitcoin coming to this address, it'll now go to that address, right? So because that one's mine, I'm stealing the Bitcoin, right? So what happens is this same message goes to 1,000 people, and they could all try to cheat, but then there would be no consensus. If there is at least some X number of people that are good actors, that are legitimate actors, they will sign, and then all the ones that try to fudge things in a way, they get discarded. And what happens is, in order to play this game, they have to make an investment of electricity and power, right? In order to play the game, you have to perform this really large number of calculations, which burns your CPU and burns a ton of electricity. And if you're going to cheat, you're not going to win, so you just wasted all that money in all the electricity. So it's easier to just play the game, right? And so now we have a mechanism where we have the attestation, we have the sort of the witnessing of a transaction and the verification of the transaction by just oodles and oodles of people that don't know each other and can't collaborate to cheat the system, right? And that makes Bitcoin the single safest, most secure form of money ever invented, because it takes away from the process of the money creation and the process of the money transmission the corruptibility of an authority. There is no authority. The authority is the consensus of the entire community, and the entire community has a deep interest in making sure that the rules are followed because they own Bitcoin and they don't want Bitcoin destroyed.